We are live. Welcome to my video. This is going to be my thoughts on Andor Season 2, Episode 12, Jedha, Kyber, Erso. The episode is rated TV 14, so will this video be? And like all other videos I've done on the show, I usually say so far, but this is the last one. Absolutely love this episode. There will be spoilers for everything Star Wars leading up to and including the episode. I'm really gonna miss the show. Let's dive right in. Yeah, awesome, bit of action, yeah, we knew that K2 had to be a big part of rescuing the other the three organic units, and, yeah, the bit with, like, I want to say his name is Melchi, the door opens, he walks out, and it's like, no sudden movements, and he's like, yes, sudden movements, and gets out of there. Just yeah, and yeah, like the grenade, which is like seemingly like the Star Wars equivalent to a flashbang, stunning, and yeah, I quite appreciated the acknowledgement to rarely seen in American media that yeah, those things can hurt people depending on the exact circumstance. There are real-life situations where people have gotten hurt because of a flashbang. Sometimes it was even, completely innocent people. Let's see. K2 like picks up one guy and like drops him back down from a sufficient height that he's not getting back. One guy goes flying off into the elevator. And you're welcome. I think that does go right, and I appreciate the appointment. Make sure keep her awake. Because yeah, if she's, let's see, is it concussion? There's various head injuries where it is extremely important that the person remains conscious. And we also have the bit with Partagaz, he's told, I mean, it's not on our end, and he just flicks the switch up and down a bunch of times. I wonder if that's going to be the thing that's going to make a bunch of conservatives hate the space fascists, and maybe long-term the real fascists as well, the non-fictional ones. Because, like, nobody likes the guy who goes up to the elevator with the button is clearly already lit up. Like, somebody else pressed it, and there's several of us here. Do you think everybody just walked up to the elevator and then didn't press the button? And then he goes up and he presses it multiple times. Like, okay, you know what? This guy sucks. These guys are terrible. I guess I'll briefly talk Dedra, since there is very little of her in this episode, and yeah, we see her in like a uniform, and not long after it cuts back to her. Yeah, she's in one of the cells. She's, doing the forced labor now. So yeah, she's helping build the Death Star. She is at the same level as all these people that she thought herself above, and she cries. We have not seen her like really break down like that before, but she is being punished for trying too hard. An argument could be made 3 hard to win, and she wasn't even like, how wrong was she? She was technically correct, the very best kind of correct. Basically the mistake she made, which was definitely a mistake, was going after Luthen without having, like, the moment that she's inside the room with him, stun him, bring him to interrogation chamber as soon as at all possible, but I talked about my thoughts on the individual scene in my video on that episode. Other than that, I mean, she broke protocol. She went against their precious rules, and now they see her as just as bad as the lowest of the low. She's worked her whole life to not be that, to prove she's not her parents. Those terrible terrorists who, go against everything. They just want chaos for everyone. and now, yeah, you know, she's wearing the exact same uniform. Like, the first time someone sees her in that, they're not even, they might not even know that she used to be Imperial. They might think, oh, I don't know, I mean, she must have done some crime. She was probably a civilian, you know, just, yeah. Let's see, then we have the, yeah, that's it for Dedra. Not a lot about Clea either, so I will briefly talk some more about her. Yeah, I love that they, you know, they just Star Warsified it enough that, you know, because we can see, okay, you know, that thing plugged in her arm, I'm thinking that's an IV, you know, which I guess means she'll be going to a good school at least. But, you know, later they you know, she wakes up alone, and they do the thing, even in the Star Wars galaxy, waking up in a hospital goes the same way in American shows and movies. But yeah, you know, she goes out, like, it is raining Lothcats and Wookiees out there, and she just is, you know, she's still devastated over the loss of Luthen, you know, and like Vel has to say, no, it's me, Vel. Like, she's unsure if Clea is even like registering that, you know. And let's see, yeah, you know, she watches all of the supplies being carried past, and yeah, you know, it's very different from one of Luthen's ops. I think that covers her. So I will just very briefly talk about the ending. So apparently it is not meant to set up, you know, the amazing adventures of Andor Jr. It is saying, you know, hope lives on. His line isn't dead. You know, the operator made a mistake, basically. But the, yeah, it is sweet, and you know, her happiness at that, you know, not losing him, which I suppose at this point she doesn't know she's about to, but, you know, yeah, keeping some part of him alive and with her. And seeing B2, I was hoping we were going to see B2 at least once more. And I like that they spoke binary when they weren't talking to people. You know, I think it's, you know, ultimately I think it's a decision to be made by each individual, but, you know, yeah, like immigrants and such, like, if you want to keep your own language, I don't think anybody should stand in the way of that. I think that pretty much just does cover the main, leave the main plot uncovered. So, yeah, I really like K2 on the, you know, I'm gonna tell them you kidnapped me, you know, and he waves to the X-wing pilot, and yeah, and yeah, you know, Cass comes out and you know, is told, you are grounded, young man, go to your room. And yeah, if the discussion, you know, can they really believe, you know, were these two too close to Luthen to be objective about this? And let's see, yeah, and the fact that, you know, Saul, who's getting increasingly paranoid, and yeah, you know, him yeah, that's part of the thing. You know, they talk about, well, Jedha is important, and now there's, you know, a Star Destroyer over Jedha, so yeah. I think that yeah, yeah, I quite liked, you know, Mon goes to Vel and it's like, can you see if, you know, there's any truth to what he said? And she's like, so you want me to spy on him? And then she just goes to Cass like, so, Mom thinks you're full of it. Do you have a rebuttal? You know, just like, yeah. And yeah, you know, truth comes out. Yeah, it becomes clear that he was telling the truth. He was never lying about what Luthen said. I think that might... Yeah, we end on them flying off to... I already forgot the planet's name, but yeah, you know, to the start of the movie, Rogue One, and I think that pretty much covers... I like Krennic standing and watching as the Death Star is being completed, and... Oh wait, is the flying off at the end, is that the start of the movie, or is that something that will lead to the start of the... I'm a little confused on... Is this still taking place a year before the movie? Now, it seems like it's right before the movie. Yeah, and anyway. Because it didn't say 1 BBY, like 1 year before the Battle of Yavin, and the Battle of Yavin is A New Hope. And Rogue One ends right before A New Hope begins. Anyway. Yeah. I think that does pretty much cover... Yeah. Partagaz, you know, standing there and you know, listening to the... That was great to hear again. That was also great when they drank to all of them, and, you know, it's not Vel, but Andor who brings up, you know... And now I forget how to pronounce her name. Yeah, I think you know who I mean. Yeah, who died on Gorman. Vel's, you know, partner. I think... Right, I did just briefly want to acknowledge, I want to say it was Jesse Gender who pointed out they were doing the bury your gays kind of thing there. That really sucks. Yeah, American media really got to get better at that. Yeah, Partagaz, you know, standing and listening to the manifesto, and he points out there's more and more of these out there. You know, it's becoming... They're you know, what was the... I can't quote it verbatim, but Leia has a line about, you know, the tighter you squeeze, the more systems will slip through your fingers. And that's what we're seeing, you know. And yeah, the other guy's like, you know, I was told to bring you, you know, downstairs where they're waiting. And when Partagaz says, can I have a moment to collect my thoughts? Like, obviously... The other guy knows exactly what that meant. Like, even before he hears the blast. You can also see on his face when he and the stormtroopers hear the blast, like, he knew that was coming, you know. And yeah. He knew that was why Legrat was there. That's what he was being, you know, he wasn't being brought down to, get a medal. It wasn't like... surprise birthday party or something. This, you know, one wonders how many has he, you know, sent down personally? How many has he heard of that were, you know, yeah. They would torture him and eventually execute him, you know, torture him to see if he, you know, knows something, you know, as they, yeah, you know, like was said to Dedra by Krennic, you know, if you're not actually a rebel spy, you've missed your calling, you know. And yeah, I think they push it about as far as they can for TV-14, but yeah, you know, like he wasn't like doing target practice. He shoots himself with the blaster pistol that he had in the drawer, and also just note the way that he, you know, he sits down, opens the drawer, takes out the gun, puts it in front of him. Because, like, how many years has he been thinking, thank goodness, one more day of not having to off myself, because so many end up like that. You know, that is the with one of the traits of fascism and other dictatorships with a specific ideology. Yeah, they often eat their own. You know, a lot of the people who for a while were extremely useful and really helped, they end up, you know, there's some kind of sometimes it's not even something they do. Sometimes it's just, well, they've worn out their usefulness. You know, they are no longer, their services are no longer required.